believe in working with you to find a way to get things done. We call this Africanacity.
Good afternoon to our clients, good afternoon to colleagues, to our partners, and everybody who's joined us here today for this webinar, where we will be talking about enterprise and supply chain development, and more specifically, how we can leverage corporate value chains to support SMEs across the continent. My name is David Mparutsa. I am the head of enterprise and supply chain development for Absa Regional Operations. I will be your host today, and I will certainly try and make this session as informative and as interactive as possible. Now, I would like to start by setting the scene and just stating that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we expect a decline in GDPs globally. In fact, we have reports that's coming through from the World Bank, from the IMF, as well as from the African Union, that actually anticipate a GDP contraction of 1.6% across sub-Saharan Africa in 2020. Now, added to that, they also estimate that approximately 20 million jobs will be lost in the informal as well as the formal sector across the continent. We are also acutely aware of the disruption that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused on global supply chains. And I think this creates for us a perfect backdrop for us to relook at, firstly, how we support local manufacturing as well as local procurement. Secondly, how corporate clients and public sector entities can provide procurement opportunities to SMEs. SMEs have historically played a pivotal role in the economies of many African countries, and this will only be amplified by the reduction in jobs available in the formal market, going forward. So, lastly, we also want to re-emphasize or relook at how we can support SMEs from a financial point of view, as well as from a non-financial point of view, so they can execute on any procurement opportunities they receive, as well as so they can grow their businesses, potentially from small-sized businesses to medium-sized businesses, and hopefully be the future corporates across Africa. This links in particularly well with our core objectives at Absa of creating financial inclusion in Africa, right? And through our enterprise and supply chain development function, we partner with our corporate clients and public sector clients to provide uncollateralized lending to their SME suppliers as well as distributors. This allows the corporate clients to localize their supply chains, as well as for the SMEs to access the capital they require to perform on those procurement opportunities. Now, to unlock this a little bit further, I'm joined by an excellent panel of guests, industry experts, as well as SME businesses from across the continent. And I would like to introduce them to you, starting with Ms. Kushata Chilisa. Ms. Kushata Chilisa joins us from Gaborone, Botswana. She is the head of enterprise and supply chain development for Absa Bank in Botswana. From Abidjan in Ivory Coast, we are joined by Mr. Danlami Gomwak. He is the Principal Domestic Linkages Officer at the African Development Bank. We also have Naomi Mwita, Finance and Operations Director at Alpha Systems. She joins us from Nairobi, Kenya. And lastly, but certainly not least, we are joined by Jacob Chunga, Finance and Operations Director of Jaja Farms. He is dialing in from Lusaka in Zambia. Welcome to all the panelists.
Thank you. How are you, David?
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent, guys. So to kick right off, in my experience, Botswana certainly seems to be one of the countries that is taking significant strides towards the localization agenda and ensuring increasing participation of its citizens in the economy via supply chain opportunities. So if I can go directly to my colleague Kushata with the first question here. So could you please detail for us what you've observed in terms of efforts the government is taking in driving this agenda, as well as some of the interventions corporates and public sector clients are taking to support this government agenda?
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, maybe I should just give a backdrop in terms of what traditionally we've been known as in terms of our economy. Botswana, obviously, as you know, we've been known mainly for our diamonds. So largest contributor for our GDP is the diamonds themselves, and the fact that we are an importing nation, so we have a high import bill. So I think those two factors have been what has driven government for the most part to go down this road of localization. Now, furthermore, in terms of how our economy has been impacted over the past couple of years, we've seen rising unemployment numbers. Now, in terms of the story that we're seeing since our launch of ESD in 2017, we've seen government supporting citizens through their citizen empowerment drive, or rather the localization story. And the story behind that has been that as a government, they have seen that a lot of the things that we import, in terms of the goods that we import as a country, are things that, or goods that can be produced locally. We've seen one, closure of borders for confectionery, bread. There's no reason why a country with a population our size should really be having shops importing bread from countries across the border, and also goods such as bottled water. So I think in the past 2 years, we've seen the closure of borders for various products that the government believes that there is that capacity locally. And where there's no capacity locally, government is actually driving corporates to partner with them through various initiatives to create that capacity. So it's not only just the legislation which has led to the closure of borders, but it's also that partnership that we've seen with government and corporates. The partnerships between governments and some of the corporates has been through the government putting actual pressure on multinationals to say, you know what, the locals here, the Botswana, they are buying from you. You've come to set up shop, they're buying goods and services from you. But what portion of that money that they're spending actually leaves the country? And what portion of that is actually creating further employment within the country? So that has also driven that drive. We've partnered with some corporates who are struggling to find local supply of those goods. And they've partnered with us to say, Absa, we want to also push the localization drive. We want to be in alignment with government. What can we as corporate X do within our value chain or rather, which SMEs can you help us find which can actually supply us so that we can also tell the localization story? Another thing that we've seen over the past 2 years has been, I would say, the change in definition by corporates for CSR, corporate social responsibility. Traditionally, corporates would, I would say, buy small things like buying blankets or stationery for schools, but now they're looking at CSR from a sustainable point of view to say they want to have real impact within the economy, lasting impact. And that lasting impact we've seen it comes through the creation of employment, the support of local businesses. As Absa ourselves, since our launch in 2017, what we've seen with our extension of funding to SMEs within some of these programs, we've seen that we've actually created over 220 jobs, which actually helps government in that objective of reducing the rising unemployment numbers. So I think it's that partnership between government, corporate, and a financial provider like Absa who understands the need for that. Because as you can imagine, with what has happened with COVID-19, the pandemic, when it hit, we saw the shock within the various economies, especially for us who are, like I said, whose GDP is largely driven by diamonds. You'd find that consumer demand for luxury goods globally dropped, which meant that affected mining of diamonds, and that has obviously in turn affected our GDP. And not only that, but you'd see that being an economy that has a high import bill, with the closure of borders, it meant a country like us, a lot of the goods that we were used to seeing in shops we couldn't see, and it pushed a lot of corporates to actually look around themselves to say, well, I can't get this across the border. Is there a local SME that can supply me with this? And it's actually been, although the pandemic has been bad, but it's actually supported the narrative for the need to localize the production of certain goods, especially where the capacity is there. So definitely the partnerships in Botswana between government, Absa, and corporates has seen the success of the citizen empowerment story.
For that answer, Kushata. So what I'm picking up from that is, government driving legislation that's filtering through to corporates, and we're coming in as a financial partner to provide funding for some of these local suppliers or localized suppliers, so you can actually retain much more of your economic value in country. And I think that's really fantastic efforts that's coming through from Botswana. But I suppose my follow-up question for that is, outside of governments and the corporates that you're working with, is there any other partners that you make use of to run successful enterprise and supply chain development programs?
Okay. In terms of other partners, one of the things that we noted as Absa is SMEs don't just struggle alone with getting the funding. These are aspects of operational risk and performance risk, and that's usually driven by capacity building. So what we've done is we've partnered with business development service providers, because we understand SMEs don't typically have all the expertise that they need in running effective and efficient businesses. You typically find that an SME business owner would not only be, especially when the business is a micro, you find that it's not only the marketing manager, but they're the financial manager, and they're also the human resource manager, and one person cannot have that capability. That is what differentiates, for the most part, corporates and SMEs in terms of performance. So what we've done as Absa to basically address that gap is to avail training for free for SMEs that are on those programs. So not only do we avail the training for free through the likes of your Leas and the Tokafalas, but we've also engaged private service providers who actually provide bespoke solutions for SMEs within these programs. Because one of the key concerns also for the corporates in terms of availing contracts or purchase orders for these SMEs is, how do we know they'll perform? Who will ensure that performance? So as Absa, we step in to ensure that there is that understanding of how to run a business. And over and above that, what we do is post giving the funding, we do what we call post loan management, where depending on what business the SME is in, we do post loan management, where we check the productivity of the business, ensuring that everything is happening as it should, so that there is no surprise on the side of the corporate or even the bank themselves in ensuring that the SMEs is able to repay the funding that's been provided for them. Because for us, we often say, as Absa, we want to bring possibilities to life, and in doing that, we also want those businesses to be sustainable, to be successful. We want to be able to tell success stories, and to tell success stories, there is that element of addressing performance risk and operational risk. So there's that training that we provide through the different service providers, but we also in-house, we do the post-loan management. But over and above that, we've also put in investment into having an ED center, because we understand that some SMEs do not have access to the likes of your Wi-Fis and your boardrooms and your workstations, especially during times like this. It won't be necessarily that you can't operate, but because of perhaps the type of setup that you have, you may not be able to pay your rentals at this time, or you might just need to quickly rush into a place where you can use Wi-Fi and printing facilities and not have the additional stress that comes with paying your bills or going to an internet cafe. So we have an ED center in Gaborone, which is available for SMEs on the program, and that also is available for them for free. So in terms of what we're doing as Absa, it goes beyond the availing the funding, the unsecured lending for these SMEs that are in these corporate value chains, but it's the provision of the capacity building, not only the provision of the capacity building, but the provision of the center and the post-loan management.
Fantastic. So really a comprehensive support structure which encompasses both financing as well as non-financial support. So that's really fantastic. But one of the other questions that that I have, Kushata, is when it comes to lending to SMEs, this is predominantly perceived as a high risk area for many financial institutions, to lend to. Is there anything else that you're doing to de-risk your portfolio?
Yes, we've put several measures in place to address the risk. We have partnerships with the likes of your USAID, which also minimizes our risk in terms of that. But I would say, based on the partnerships we have, there are some partnerships which have been great in terms of mitigating the risks that you'd actually find. In terms of the mining clients, we have a recent partnership which is actually helping us in terms of understanding how these SMEs would perform on the ground. So partnerships have been very key for us in terms of mitigating risk. I think that's what differentiates us with other banks. When you see the SMEs that we actually have within the ecosystems or the value chains of certain mining houses, we actually also have relationships with the suppliers of the machinery. So that also helps with the performance risk, because what we then do is we engage the suppliers to ensure that the efficiency of the actual machinery is operating as it should. And when it's not, we engage them to ensure that in the end, the SME performs. So partnerships for us have been very critical and has led to the success of the ESD story in Botswana.
Fantastic, Kushata. So partnerships, really a key word that's coming through there. Partnerships with government, partnerships with our corporate clients, partnership with entities that can provide business development services, as well as entities that can de-risk some of our books. So really a fantastic story that's coming through from Botswana. I would like to bring in now one of our SME panelists, Jacob Mulibwanji.
Bueno Mulibwanji.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Jacob, I would like to start by just asking you to give us an overview of your business, what you operate, some of the corporates that you supply.
Okay. So our company is called Jaja Farms. We started 4 years ago. Jaja is just an abbreviation for Jamie and Jacob, Jamie being my wife, Jacob being myself. We started this business from a point of I would say a point of disappointment. We used to shop a lot. We still shop a lot in one of the branches here in Lusaka, Woodlands branch for Pick and Pay. We would buy a lot of popcorn. I was obese at some point, so I was told to eat a lot of popcorn during the night. So every time we would go there, we would find popcorn, but it was not Zambian popcorn. And I started questioning myself, and we figured, okay, let's give it a try. Let's start this business by supplying popcorn and beans, because we have some premium beans here in Zambia. We call it Solwezi beans. And for funny reason, Pick and Pay didn't stock that. So when we found out that it's not actually the chain store that has a problem, but us, the people that are in Zambia, are the problem, because we don't supply. There was a tendency of local suppliers starting to supply, then falling off the grid. Reason being financing. So when we started Jaja Farms, we started very small. We started with less than $5. That was 5 kg of beans. We took our beans to Pick and Pay. It took us 1.5 years to get into the store. Because they were not sure. On one hand, they were not sure if we could meet the supply, and they were not sure how long we would sustain them. So after going there 1.5 years, I met a man. His name is Dirk Edwards. He's the head buyer here, I believe. He gave us a shot, and he was really open about it. He just said, Jacob, I'm going to give you a shot, and don't let me down. Those were his words. So Pick and Pay gave us that advantage to be known in this country. And we've been trading now 4 years with Pick and Pay. We've actually expanded from just Pick and Pay to Choppies. We're looking into getting into other chain stores like ShopRite. We have our own local stores here, the Melissa's, the Pantry. We've got plenty of them. So that's about Jaja. So we're into dry nuts, dry popcorn, and dry beans. Our popcorn is special because it's non-hybrid, so to say. So you can buy it and plant it and it will grow. That's the backdrop of Georgia Farms.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So, picking up that, Pick and Pay has really, assisted you in terms of getting you up to scratch in terms of the level of supply that they require. And that process took about 1.5 years. So there is a significant time investment that's required there. But I picked up on another point that you said you started your business with just under $5 of capital. I mean, how have you managed to, fund the growth of your business?
Okay. So it hasn't been easy. I won't lie to you. It hasn't been easy. Like Utana said, a lot of SMEs have a problem with bookkeeping, number one. I'm an accountant by profession. I worked for an SME at one point, and I always used to have headaches because my boss wouldn't give me receipts for that, this and that. It was just, moving along. So we would try to go to the banks, and the banks obviously would want collateral. Which we didn't have. I mean, if we had the money, we wouldn't have bought beans worth $5 or less than $5. But the banks wanted collateral. So what we did was, I had family come in. My late brother, Mwenya Munkonge, he was an MP. This man was just so supportive of my program and my business that to a certain degree he had to loan me some money. To buy myself some stock for Pick and Pay. From that, we started by taking. Then when we saw that there was need for more stock, I couldn't go back to him and say, hey, I need more money. What I did was I started involving small scale farmers in the bush. When I say the bush, I'm talking about typical village life. In Zambia, you will find that people that live in the village don't really know nothing about nothing. What they know is farming. And when they farm, that's their bread and butter. So what I did was I told them, I said, listen, you partner with Georgia Farms, you plant popcorn or groundnuts or beans for us, and I will buy everything that you plant. It was a good deal to them because they would struggle with market. And every time I would struggle with stock, I would run back to people that would loan me money. But they wouldn't loan you so much money that they can sustain you. So what I did was I started pursuing other avenues like NGOs and just people that would I'm going to be honest with you. SMEs, we're not too corporate. When you're running a business like I'm running a business, you might find yourself in the hands of loan sharks. The passion and the love for what I was doing, because it was bigger than me, it was not about me just supplying Pick and Pay. It was national representation in a major chain store. So I would do everything in my power. At one point, I had to give up my car and surrender my white book. That is what I did. I got money from a certain individual so that I could just supply these chain stores. But you see, when you are so passionate about something, you stop worrying about the risk and you start looking at the glory. So our journey has been up and down through banks, through loan sharks, through this and that, and we've always come out. So when I heard about Absa's program with SMEs, I was ecstatic. My wife and I, we would troop to the bank and see our manager, and we would get into it, and she would tell me, Jacob, we need management accounts, we need this and that, we need this and that. And the bonus for us was Pick and Pay is going to vouch for you and say, these guys are going to bring the stock, give them the money. And that's how we've survived. It's no secret in Zambia, out of 100 suppliers, back then, you would only find 5 suppliers that are indigenous Zambians. Reason being, financing was a problem. We couldn't finance ourselves because you would have a lag in 2 payments, 60 days. And now you only have, say about $10,000 worth of stock and you give it all out to Pick and Pay and whatever. By the end of 30 days, your stock is done. but you ain't got your money back. So when I heard this program with Absa, I jumped on it. Like my life depended on it. And because my life did depend on it, our bloodline right now is Absa. And that's all I can tell you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Jacob. So again, partnerships coming through, and I think through the partnership that we have with Pick n Pay in Zambia, you have managed to actually access some funding to continue on supplying Pick n Pay. So again, a very positive story that's coming through from Zambia. But Jacob, in as much as you are a supplier to Pick n Pay, I'm very keen to unpack a little bit further, who your suppliers are, how you interact with them, and how you ensure that they can consistently provide you with quality product so you can on-supply that to Pick n Pay.
All right. So like I mentioned, we started out with about three outgrower farmers who are based in a city called Mumbwa. It's in the southern part of Zambia. It's got excellent soil for popcorn. So what we do is we give them seed. They don't have to worry about buying seed because they look at it as spending instead of as an investment. So what we do is we take away that pressure from them and we give them the actual seed, which also helps us to keep our standards high. So we give them the seed, they plant it. I'll give you a practical example. If I give a farmer in, say, Eastern Province, Petaoke, I give them 50 kg worth of nuts, groundnuts. We're going to have a yield of about 2,000 to about 3,000 kgs, which is going to come to us. And now when that comes to us, we give them a predetermined price, which is good for them for that particular period. So for instance, we're planting now, this is November. In April, we're going to have harvest. So when we hit April, everything is extra cheap because everyone is trying to offload. But what we do with our farmers is that we give them a higher price so that they can still have faith in Jaja Farms. So we give a lot of our products to these guys, outgrowers, and we don't necessarily look for the bougie kind of outgrowers. We look for the people that are deep inside the villages who don't have income opportunities like the other people. So P1 for us is the village people, which make up at least, I think, 60% of our deliveries to these chain stores.
Fantastic. Really uplifting story, Jacob, to hear, how you're supporting micro farmers in Zambia. And that is certainly a sector where there isn't much financing that goes into that sector. So really uplifting story. Thank you for that. So I would like to move over to Nairobi in Kenya now. Jambo, Naomi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. So in the same spirit given to Jacob, I'd like to give you a platform to tell us a bit about your business, Naomi.
Okay, thank you so much. My company is Alpha Systems Limited. We are an innovation and technology company based in Nairobi, Kenya. We focus on research and development of solutions to daily life challenges. We found ourselves in automation of buildings. We're doing a lot of domestic, enterprise, and industrial solutions. We've done a lot of vending machines and business management solutions. We also we do a lot of customized automation based on customer requests. We are also in the professional lighting solutions where we offer light design. In this, we focus on the right intensity and the quality of lighting. We offer LED bulbs and LED equivalents. In this, we look at energy and cost efficiency for bulbs and improve aesthetics for buildings and rooms in general.
Fantastic.
We've been in this business for, sorry?
Carry on, Naomi.
Okay. I'm saying we've been in the business for the last about 8 years.
Great. So I'm picking up there, lighting solutions, solar solutions, which is, kind of speaking to green energy. This is quite an interesting space, for an SME. You typically find larger businesses sort of dominating, this space. So I'm very interested to know what is your approach and your interest in green energy.
Okay, our first interest in the green energy, we went in with LED bulbs. Like I've said, what we were doing is we don't just sell bulbs. We customize the lights. So we're able to get into a lot of hospitality industries, restaurants, schools where special lighting is required, because they would understand that you need this kind of intensity, you need this kind of quality, you need this kind of aesthetics and so forth. So that was our first entrance into the energy market. And as we progressed, then there was need to do then we got into the solar energy. And as we went through, when we started solar, what we went with was standalone security solutions. Then we found that there were many other needs that our clients needed, and that's how we've been involving. We evolve with the needs of our clients.
Excellent. So really evolving with the needs of your clients, in as much as a financial institution like ourselves would do. Now, Naomi, I understand Absa Kenya recently completed its rebranding from previously Barclays Kenya. And I understand that you were involved in terms of providing lighting solutions to some of our branches. Can you please detail for us how you got access to that opportunity? And did you have enough capital to execute on that opportunity once you got the procurement opportunity?
Thank you. So what happened when Absa rebranded from a Barclays? They had challenges in the banking halls mainly. One, because the previous color was blue and the current color became a bit too dark for their banking halls. So they had challenges where customers would go to the teller sections and instead of seeing the teller, they would see a reflection of themselves because of the background of the color of the tellers. So that's so they had advertised for, I think they were looking to buy bulbs that would mirror what they wanted. So we approached them with a optimization proposal where we would look at the needs. We did an engagement where we scoped their needs. We did site visits, we did a POC, and then we designed the luminance that was needed, because in each branch, you have to take care of natural lighting, you have to take care of the building size, now the seating arrangements. So there were many considerations that had to be taken to achieve the light intensity that was needed across the branches. Okay. And so once sorry?
Carry on, Naomi.
Oh yeah. So so that's how we got into Absa. So we went through various stages for proposal, selection, and I think finally they ended up with about 3 vendors. And we got a bigger chunk of the branches because of when we did the POC, our POC was among the best. So we were then faced with another hurdle, is that we have a big project to do, and the timelines were very strict. They needed this done by closure of less than 2 months. Normally, when we get such a project, you would have about 6 weeks for, you have to import the right the materials. Remember, this was also during COVID times, so import regulations were a bit tighter and longer. So then comes the next handle that we had to face was, how do we get this financing? because remember, with most borders crossed, there was the issue of now you're scrambling for the few items that are available. And so the person who wins is the person who has the cash in their hands. And we couldn't raise such amount of money in such a short time. So we approached Absa Bank and they proposed to us LPO financing, where we surrender the LPO, we give them the LPO, they give us a percentage. It was 80% of they are able to finance 80% of the LPO, which was just basically what we needed to be able to bring in the things, run the project. And as we were invoicing by milestones, then money comes in, because you finish a few branches, then we had agreed on a milestone payment plan. So we were able now to deliver the project within the required time.
Excellent. So, what I'm picking up there is, the ability for you to access some funding before you started the job was really critical in you being able to, to complete that job. I want to preempt a question which hasn't come through yet, seeing that you are operating in this space. And would you have any advice, Naomi, for SMEs out there in the continent who want to get involved in this green energy space, seeing how topical it is at the moment?
Oh, yes, because green energy is the way of the future, and we're living in the future. The future is now. It's sustainable. We need to think beyond what we're currently doing. We need to think what happens to our children. I mean, we can't exhaust all the resources. We know resources are not every resource that we have is sustainable for the future. We also need to think about using energy that is sustainable for the environment. We need to think about cost effectiveness. We need to think about the environment. I mean, how we are polluting, because the reason why people are moving, say like we're moving from the fluorescence, is the decay. When you look at the waste that is being emitted by the energy source that we are using, how does it impact on the environment? How does it impact on the animals in the planet? How does it impact on the children? How does it impact on the space? So the more reasons why leadership and people in general need to think is, what are we doing for our planet? Are we looking into tomorrow? Yeah.
Excellent. That's really pleasing to see how SMEs are playing a role in solving for some of the sustainable development goals set out by the United Nations. I believe that's SDG 7 on clean and affordable energy. So really well done, for your efforts. I would like at this point to move over to our last panelist from Abidjan in the Ivory Coast. I understand it is still good morning to you, Danlami.
Yes, it is, David. And good morning to all the colleagues and all the participants in this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Danlami, can you share with us the key mandate of the African Development Bank, and in particular, what your role as Domestic Linkages Officer in the natural resource space entails?
Oh, thank you very much, David, and bonjour to everybody again. Well, I work with the African Development Bank, and as many already know, African Development Bank is Africa's bank. It's owned by all the African countries, with some non-regional ownership as well. The mandate of the bank itself is to mobilize and allocate resources for investment in African countries, as well as providing technical advice, policy advice, to support the development efforts of these countries. The African Development Bank has, over the last few years, used high 5 sort of focus priority areas, which essentially is about feeding Africa, lighting up, empowering Africa. So I'm happy to hear some of what Naomi is saying, integrating Africa and improving the quality of life, as well as industrializing Africa, which ties into a lot of what has been mentioned here before. What we do is we have lending operations, which you're familiar with, David, as well as non-lending operations where I am housed. And that brings me to speak about the African Natural Resource Center. Now, the African Natural Resource Center is a relatively new department, but it's been set up to support African countries to make good decisions, developmental decisions around the natural resources that we all know that African countries have had and have been using to grow their economies and to develop. We provide similar technical assistance, knowledge generation in terms of economic as well as technical capacity building. These are all sort of like intended to support the decision making and build the ecosystem around proper natural resource management. Now, my role within that department, and I'm housed within the extractive unit, so I deal a lot with mining, petroleum, as well as that's oil and gas as well. But obviously covers forestry, fisheries, the renewable as well as the non-renewables. And the role of linkages is similar to what we're discussing where supply chain development is sort of a linkage where we're using supply chains to grow industries, grow SMEs, create jobs, and create opportunities throughout Africa. And a lot of what I'm hearing right now actually speaks to some of that, because I'm looking at all the people impacted down that supply chain. I'm looking at the skills that are being developed, and I'm looking at with people like Absa working, the eventual upscaling, moving up the value chain of the services that are being provided. And that's where sort of in a nutshell, looking at the sort of the regional look, what we do at Africa Development Bank, what we do at Africa Natural Resource Center, and what I perform in my role. Thank you.
Excellent. I just want to encourage the audience to please ask questions using the Q&A section. We will have we'll leave 10 minutes at the end of the session to go through those questions. But going back to you, Danlami, so lack of capacity building is often a key inhibitor, which is identified for SMEs to disable them or to not allow them to grow into real sustainable businesses. So I would like to find out exactly what the African Development Bank is doing to capacitate SMEs so they can specifically participate in value chains such as mining and oil and gas, which are key commodities for us on the continent.
Well, thank you again for that question, David. And well, I'll say this. What we do in terms of support is we support through partnerships. So how the Africa Development Bank works is we have several partnerships with donors and other players within the ecosystem that support the business development services and actually have hands-on relationships with SMEs, such as what Absa is doing. As you can imagine, the need is great, and the number of, and in fact, the entire chain of potential SMEs, because you have an entire spectrum from SMEs that are, you would say, lower capacity that just want to maybe supply, primary products, to right up to those that are highly technical SMEs, similar to maybe what Naomi is talking about, that are actually, prefabricating, and are actually very high up the value chain. So identifying the different needs of these different sort of players in sort of that ecosystem, and giving appropriate skilling. Because what happens when you go up to banks, they want to see, as Jacob mentioned, your governance structure. They want to see your financial handling. They want to see your legal. And you find out that a lot of SMEs are simply just 2-3 dedicated people, maybe even just one, that has put their heart and soul into something, and generally that is not enough. So that's where the support we provide in terms of the special funds, the trust funds, and interestingly enough, a lot of the lending aspect also has a technical advisory element to it, but those are usually for larger projects. What we're talking about is more for the SMEs and the business, the domestic business environment. That support is provided through a lot of trust funds and a small amount from grants provided through partnerships from our donor partners. Thank you.
Great. So partnerships again coming up as a key thing, and the ability to capacitate SMEs are critical in their sustainability going forward. But I want to go back to our first panelist, and Kushata had actually mentioned that the government in Botswana, as well as certain corporates and public sector entities have sort of implemented certain localization policies, right? And I want to get from you, Danlami, what are some of the key considerations that one must take when sort of drafting these policies and implementing them, conscious of the fact that not every single country has gotten to that point where they're actually drafting policies, but if they were to do that, what are some of the key considerations that they should make in the drafting and implementing of these policies, localization policies specifically?
Okay, thank you, David. That's another very interesting question. So in our role is, as I mentioned before, providing support and advice. And what we have seen, because we've had the opportunity and the privilege to work in many countries, is the importance of coordination. Coordination between the governments, between the industries themselves, either the international companies and the local communities. That's the stakeholders within the local domestic communities. That is the banks and also the SMEs. Because it's important while looking at some of these localization rules that have the best intention of creating jobs and expanding opportunities, to ensure that the necessary environment is provided that can allow the SMEs to actually thrive and actually engage with the opportunities that are available. For instance, providing support either to sort of the local financial community as well as insurance. And I know we haven't touched on that, but for instance, as Jacob and Naomi are speaking, I can't help but thinking, what are their insurance coverages? In terms of ensuring maybe the products on the farm, goods in transit, and things like that. Now, this is an entire ecosystem, because as you move up the value chain, you find out that there's certain activities you cannot take part in unless you have the right type of insurance. And what we've seen by and large in numerous countries is the insurance companies, domestic insurance companies, may not be able to handle, large claims or large coverages that may require premiums close to $1 million or more, especially in the extractive industry areas. Now, this could also be easily said for the agro area as well, because it's not as if one sector, SMEs in one sector are having it easier than SMEs in another sector. This is an entire business environment and ecosystem problem. And I think just as a final sort of suggestion of what we've seen is, as these legislations are being drafted, it's also very good to see how you could provide actual real support to the sector, either in terms of trust funds, like there is in Nigeria. There's a Nigerian Content Management Fund that tries to support in the industry, but not only to keep it trapped for that specific industry, but to make sure that whatever resources are available to improve the entire business ecosystem, because that is very critical in cyclical downturns when you need very transferable skills that can move from one industry to the other to maintain employment. So perhaps I'll leave it there, and if there are any further questions, we can interrogate it deeper.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. We have opened up the floor, if I can call it that, for questions, and I've got the first one here, which I was expecting. It says, nothing heard about rate of interest and terms of lending. So maybe we'll give that to Kushata first around, how do you approach the interest rate? And I think what this attendee is asking is about affordable financing and the terms of lending. How do you impact that in your programs?
In terms of what we do with the programs in relation to pricing with the corporates, remember what pricing, when it comes to pricing with banks, the pricing is dependent on the risk. So once we de-risk in terms of looking at the corporate who is issuing the purchase order or the contract, or even the memorandum of understanding that we have with the corporates, then we their price. What you'd find is typically SMEs on these programs are SMEs that would otherwise not even, I would say, qualified to get the funding that they've actually received, and the pricing that they actually receive when, well, not, I shouldn't say receive, that they actually get charged on these programs is actually at a lower rate than what they get when they go straight into the banking hall, basically because of the nature of the relationships that we have. Over and above that, the requirements that we actually place forward for SMEs on programs is completely different from your standard lending. Typically, you'd say in terms of SMEs, when you come through, you'd find that if you just come through into the bank for just normal lending, you'd be asked for 3-year financials. They would have to be audited, and you'd have to have been in operation, like I said, for 3 years. So that some of the things that you typically have as requirements, you need to have security. And sometimes if you have run into some problems, you might be listed on either ITC or CRB, depending on what country you're in. But in these programs, what we do is we look at the SMEs from a different perspective. We take that into consideration, knowing that because of the MOU, or the Memorandum of Understanding that we have with the corporate in ensuring the success of the SME, we price different, and we then extend the lending despite the challenges that otherwise would have prevented the SME from receiving the funding. So definitely I would say the pricing is different. It's definitely lower. And the requirements to access that funding is also different from your normal lending in any bank.
Great. So what I'm picking up is definitely a non-traditional view of looking at these SMEs and the reliance on the corporate and other de-risking mechanisms to actually impact, or to actually have an actual impact on the pricing that we give to those SMEs. Thank you for that, Kushada. I've got a second question here that is saying, what are the trends that will shape how SMEs in Africa do business in 2021? And I suppose best to ask or to answer is one of our SME panelists. So, Jacob, how are you gearing up for doing business in 2021 as the world has shifted into a new way of working and interacting? What are some of the things that you are looking to implement as you move your business forward into 2021?
So as Georgia Farms, we're trying to now get into diversify our product range, because when you speak about farming, you cannot just stick to one product. For instance, groundnuts, we have about 4 varieties in Zambia. Beans, we have about 5 to 6 varieties. So what we've done is, number one, we are trying to diversify into it. Number 2 is we have started what we're calling coated groundnuts. They're coated with garlic, cinnamon, and garlic and cinnamon. So those 2 products are what we are calling coated nuts. The diversification aspect for us is big in terms of doing business in 2021. Number 2 is looking beyond the 4 borders of Zambia and looking to places like Botswana, places like Kenya, to give them a taste of what us, their African brothers and sisters, can produce, just like South Africa does the same for us. Our plan is to actually, because we grow a lot of maize in Zambia, our plan is to start our own cornflakes factory to produce our own cornflakes. So diversification is one of the key components for us as Georgia Farms in 2021.
Thank you, Jacob. To pick up on what you said around taking your business outside of Zambia, we've got another question here from the audience, which states, on the subject of coordination, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will open up corridors of growth. How do SMEs look, or how do SMEs lock into this opportunity? And maybe Danlami, from an African development point of view, you can give us your views on how the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will have some impact for SMEs on the continent.
Yeah, thank you again, David. I think this is an area that has, it's great potential, and we're all looking forward to the potential impacts. It will be some time to sort of get together, but for instance, I know that the Secretariat will be dealing on how to clear goods settlements and exchange rates and things like that, because it's critical as well that as SMEs are prepared to compete in other markets, that they understand that those markets would have their own little peculiarities as well. But at the end of the day, I think those opportunities will be there, and it's important that the SMEs get together to also get involved in this process. I think SMEs should be involved, should be with their governmental ministries of trade. We'll have these discussions and have these consultations along, and again, the theme of partnership comes to play. Don't be a bystander. The organized private sector should definitely be engaged at this period where it is being formed and actually take an active role in forming these relationships.
Excellent. So I suppose, to sum that up, SMEs must keep an eye open for developments that's taking place within the space and looking for appropriate opportunities that they can lock into. Fantastic. So I would like to thank all our panel members. We just have 5 minutes left, and maybe just to ask for a few closing remarks. I'll start with my colleague, Ms. Kushata Chilisa from Botswana.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Hi, it's been a pleasure being with all of you on the webinar. I think in closing for us, for those SMEs that are actually located within the borders of Botswana, it's just to say Absa is open for business. We're looking at supporting SMEs. We're looking at bringing possibilities to life, and looking at what we've done in the past, I would say 3 years from November 2017 till now, having extended funding of over 300 million and having trained over 1,000 SMEs, and just having created even 220 jobs indirectly through funding has been evidence of the success story of this journey that we are on as Absa, with the ESD programs in partnership with not only the government but the corporates and other entities. So I would say, if you're not banking with Absa, and if you're looking at growth, and if you're looking at opportunities, like I've said before, Absa is the bank for you.
Thank you, Kushata. On that note, maybe to move to Naomi in Kenya with just a 1 minute closing remark.
Thank you. I think for me, what my learning experience in the last few months is I know a lot of big corporates, like let's say Absa, and not just big corporates like Absa, but in many government institutions, many NGOs, there's a shying away of working with SMEs. Reason being, sometimes you're referred to as too small, like Jacob was saying, is that people don't trust that you will deliver the product. People don't trust that you have the capacity to be there. I mean, they don't look at the longevity of the companies, but the best people to work with, the best companies to work with when you want solutions is the SME, because one, they are versatile. They can change their production to suit customers' needs. They are able to listen more, and they're small enough to accommodate people. So sometimes small is good, not always big is best. And I appreciate the Absa partnership with the SMEs, because for big people like them, listening to small people like us wouldn't be where we are. So I appreciate that kind of partnership.
Thank you very much, Naomi. The best people to work with are SMEs, and that is from Naomi. If I can move over to Jacob, please, just a minute closing remark.
I want to say thank you to Absa. You guys have resuscitated us as a business, but more, I want to say thank you to Pick and Pay. More can be done. The one thing that we need is absolute support from both ends, from Absa and the chain stores themselves. I hope and trust that Absa Africa is doing something to bring in other chain stores, because you guys are keeping people without really understanding how many they are. Kushata said 200 million. It's more than that. I have a workforce of about 22 people, and each person is a family person. What Absa did for us is absolutely amazing. I just hope and trust that you guys will do even much better next year.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for that validation. I'll close with you, Danlami, and we've got a 30-second view from the African Development Bank.
I'll be very brief. Just to thank everybody, it's been a learning process for me. I think it's always good to engage with SMEs. What I would say is wherever you can have partnerships, wherever you can merge, Wherever you can merge competencies and find the appropriate partnerships, please do it. It helps fill out some competencies. What we see a lot of times is some people want to go it alone. You can go far, you can go fast when you're alone, but you can go further when you're together. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Danlami. So, audience, that does bring us to the conclusion of this webinar. Once again, I would like to thank our external panelists, Danlami, Naomi, and Jacob. Thank you very much for your time and expertise. To my colleague in Botswana, Kushata, thank you as well. Just to close off by saying that the recording of this webinar will be available on our websites and social media sites, as I believe, and to wish everybody a good day further. Thank you very much.
Absa, we believe in working with you to find a way to get things done. We call this Africanacity.